I was in the United States Army for 2 years, drafted. And then I got out of the military, went to college, and graduated in 1963 in a BSEE degree. Since then, I have been in a graduate program for nuclear engineering. Also have taken pre-med, and I've been working contracts since 1963 also for NASA, Department of Energy, and several other electronic firms in the Washington, D.C. area. In 1957 to 59, I was mostly outside of Albany, Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C., at a Nike Ajax missile facility. I was a radar operator. In May of 1958, about 6 a.m., and the reason I knew it was 6 is because that's when everybody got up. I looked out the window. At first I heard a sound. It sounded like a pulsating transformer. I looked out the window and looked across the field and saw this object heading towards the ground and saw it crash. It broke apart, and then it took off again in flight. I immediately got dressed, went up onto the hill where the radar was, got a telescope that we tracked the North Star with to line our radar antennas, and sat and mounted on that radar and looked at the pieces that were laying across the field. And the largest piece that I saw, which was actually glowing white hot, was probably the size of a washing machine. Shortly thereafter, the Air Force personnel had arrived going across this field and started picking up these pieces. Now they used long poles, very long poles, to pick up the biggest piece, and they proceeded to put it on a truck that was lead-lined truck and pushed it in with another long pole and got it inside the truck itself. Then the other personnel picked up the other pieces that were laying about. Now what's interesting about it is from my knowledge of nuclear things now, I recall that these personnel were wearing radiation suits, protective suits. And then they proceeded to take the material away, have no idea where it went. The other issue there was that when the craft took off again after it crashed, it went through a grove of trees, which it actually sheared 3, 4, 5-inch limbs in just one fell swoop, or like a knife or a machete. Well, that wasn't the real exciting part. The real exciting part happened the next evening while I was on duty, and it was approximately 10, 11 at night. And I got a call from the Gaithersburg facility saying that they had 12 to 15 UFOs 50 to 100 feet off the ground. So I asked the guy who was on the radio with me, I said, what do they sound like? He took his head mic off, put it out the van window, and again the pulsating sound, except there were more of them. And he was describing them and in different shapes and so forth. I had the radar on, the M33 radar, sweep radar, and I found right next to the ground clutter where Gaithersburg sits, I found the blip where these vehicles were. And then all of a sudden they all took off at the same time. And from my radar scope, it went one sweep. It's a 33 1/3 RPM. To go that distance from the center out to where I got the next blip in the first sweep at a constant velocity would have to be 17,000 miles an hour, which we calculated from our analog computer. It was probably in excess of 30 feet in diameter. It had circular balls appeared on the outer rim up close to a cake-like fixture on top. And they were different colors. They were orange and red and some yellow, but they were pulsating. So I mean, it was quite a sight to see as it was wobbling towards the earth and hit. And it came in at a fairly rapid rate.
How far away was it from you?
Where it crashed, well, it came down, it came actually over top of the barracks. So I actually saw the tail end of where it crashed was approximately 2,000 yards. And the reason I know that is because it paralleled the launch pad, which is 2,000 yards away. There was one individual on guard duty who actually saw it come in and went over top of him. And the guard shack was just a few yards away from the barracks. And he saw that actually come down and crash all the way from when it first appeared.
But you said the retrieval was apparently by Air Force?
The Air Force, yes, it was outside the fences of the target or the radar area and also the launch pad. So it was in the civilian air, it landed in this person's cornfield. In fact, the farmer was actually standing there washing his hands when he saw it crash and take off again. It's near Mount Zion, Maryland. It's just on the other side of Mount Zion, going east. I do know that the article hit the New York Times the next day.
What year was this?
58.
May of 58.
May of 58. Directive came down not to mention this to anybody anyway. But it, of course, by this time it was already out in newspapers. What did occur was when I tracked the next night, I tracked those vehicles that were taking off. There was a question as to what they really were, and the general came back and said, well, those were helicopters, and they were doing some Navy, Army, Air Force maneuvers.
So that was...
And we all had a big laugh about that one. That was the cover story used, yes. And obviously there were other people had radars on it. They actually saw those go off also. I had another one which I can't say too much about. I can't say where I was. I was at a facility in California, that's all I can say, and I was doing particular classified work. Set aside from what was actually happening there. It was a completely different scenario. The only thing I can say is it was occurring at the same time that our astronauts were doing a loop around the moon and back again. On their trip to that moon, or to the moon itself, I heard the expression of the bogey coming in at 11 o'clock. Well, familiar with that particular term, I perked my ears and started listening a little bit and discovered that Houston and the astronauts were talking back and forth about a collision. And the astronauts asked for permission to do avoidance for a collision, and Houston finally granted that permission to do that. And after the comm links settled down a little bit, the astronauts said it's not necessary. They are now paralleling our course, and there was a discussion as to what was paralleling that course. There was another type of ship. There were portals there that they could see in. They could see beings of some sort. They did not describe these beings. They just took photographs. And after a while, a few thousand miles, and then they took off from the capsule that they were flying in and went away. They just said it was saucer-like.
A saucer-like craft.
Craft, yes.
That was paralleling their craft.
Actually paralleling their craft. And it was just far enough away they couldn't really distinguish. They saw movement, they saw somebody moving inside that ship. This is before the landing, yes. It was probably in 68, 67 maybe, somewhere in that time frame. All they said was, there they go, and they went out of sight almost immediately from their conversation. It was unedited because of where I was. An extremely restricted channel. As a matter of fact, when I was doing work at NASA, I got into the NASA library looking for the tapes. Never did find them. There's only one gentleman there that said I shouldn't. No, he said, like, you didn't hear anything. And I said, hear what? That was into that. In fact, the gentleman was very disturbed I was even there for what I was doing. A bogey is when you're flying is an object coming in, and normally during World War II they used those, and also Korean War, as a term for potential enemy craft approaching. And if they don't know the aircraft type, they call it a bogey. Approximately halfway to the moon.
On the way to?
On the way to the moon.
Okay, about
Yes.
halfway there.
Their reactions were somewhat stoic. I mean, no big thing. They didn't go, wow, look at that, look what I'm seeing. No, nothing like that at all. They just said the bogey's next to us and they're flying. Very professional. Not surprising. I don't know what instrumentation they particularly had, but they knew at their course they were going to intersect. No question about it. So they must have had some device that would tell them that. It's obvious in space, I would imagine.
Yes, well, as we get older and older, I'm 77 right now. You can't live forever, you know. So if this procedure I'm going to have to clean the blood doesn't work, then I've got probably a few more months to make it before my kidneys shut down, you know. So that's kind of why I'm kind of going along with the interview at this time.
You're seeing that what you went through is just too important for people not to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just, can we start at the beginning with your military career and just walk through what exactly your experiences were?
Was drafted into the military and got into the U.S. Army. After that, I was sent to the Signal Training Center in eastern United States.
What year would this be?
58. I went through the signal training course. And at that time, I went through the radio teletype course and also the cryptography course, crypto. They had 5 instructors that were getting out of military service. So they pulled the top 5 students, and I was 3rd in the class. So I got pulled as an instructor.
Now, were you at this time also working yet for CIA?
No,
Not yet?
no. After one day, my boss came to me, and he said, how would you like to, make some extra money? And I said, oh, money is good. So he's explained to me that he could put it through, would have to get a top secret White House Q clearance for the job, And I thought, boy, must be a pretty exclusive thing, And I said, well, what is this? And he said that I'm director for the CIA for Eastern United States, And I said, oh, I didn't know that. And he said, you weren't supposed to. After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in. And my name at that time, I used an artificial name too. Never used my real name. I started working with him on the project he was on, and that was Project Blue Book, which was kind of partially a fraud.
You're saying some of the Blue Book cases were,
Yes.
were completely fictitious?
Yes. But the cases that we got came from, I think it was Fort Belvoir, Maryland.
Fort Belvoir?
Yeah. And it didn't come from the Pentagon or it didn't come from CIA headquarters. But we would get reports about a certain sighting that they had in Mexico or Italy or something like that. And then we had people that would follow through on it, that would go out and interview the people to see if they were nutcases or if it was real, you know.
So they'd be going overseas frequently?
I wasn't, but I always stayed statewide. But the people we had working with us from the CIA would do that. We would get like a new report probably a couple times a week. I was coming into the Army fresh off the farm, you know, so I really didn't have much knowledge of anything, but my boss filled me in on Project Blue Book and what they had found so far as grays and aliens and the Roswell incident.
How did you feel when this first got dumped on you? When you first learned about this?
I was just kind of overwhelmed with all of this, you know. And I said to him, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be a judge of this type of thing. What's real, what's not, when I don't have much knowledge of it, you know. So
What did he say?
he said, well, we have to build the information as we go, and you'll see how this thing is working out.
And then the other thing is, of course, you really weren't able to tell family or close friends, obviously.
No, I couldn't tell anybody. In fact, I had to take a vow that I wouldn't tell anybody. A lot of it for 40 years and more of it for 50 years, which is up in 2010.
You're doing all this crypto work. You're looking at images, photographs, video. It's 1958, maybe the fall of 58. What happened after this?
At that time, the Project Blue Book thing kind of went pot, you know. If you remember, back in those days, they kind of declared it as a nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
They were telling the world all UFOs are misidentifications, hoaxes,
balloons,
psychological issues, whatever.
yes.
Yeah.
So my boss came to me and he says, we've both got a new assignment. And he says, oh, I said, where are we going? Oh, he says, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to be part of the Eisenhower push. He's trying to find out something about, all about these aliens that MJ-12 was supposed to find out, but never sent back reports to him.
The MJ-12, the UFO control group, were they calling it MJ-12 at that time? Yes.
They called us in, went into the Oval Office, and President Eisenhower was there and Nixon, and they said, we called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. So being a general, past general, you didn't tell them to go to hell without any real good reason, you know. Mm-hmm. So he said, I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give them a personal message. And he says, I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, tell them that to get in, they have this week, coming week, to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the First Army from Colorado and we're going to go over, we're going to take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. we're going to rip this thing apart.
Eisenhower was going to invade.
Yes,
Area 51.
Yeah, with the First Army.
So you go out with your superior.
Yes.
You fly out. You land. What happens? Can you describe this whole process? What you saw?
They took us the 13 or 15 miles south to S4 and like different garage door openings.
Okay.
And in these garage door openings, they had like different saucer crafts. The very first one had the Roswell craft in. It was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a couple.
So you see the Roswell craft, and what are some of the others that you see?
Well, the Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like real heavy aluminum foil. We could rock next to it, and you could rock it. The whole thing probably weighed 150, 300 pounds.
Could they tell what the source of power was of this craft?
Yeah, it was like a reverse gravitational thing of some kind. In fact, one later on, I got the mathematical code for reversing gravity in a 3x5 card. I guess there are different types of grays and so on.
How did you see that evidence?
Well, at the later on at S4, we viewed the autopsy film, and then the colonel said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien."
All right, right there. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, I thought, boy, we had no idea we were going to see the real thing. All we saw was film.
You had to have a little bit of heart racing at that
Yes.
moment.
My boss was able to go in and had like a partial interview with him.
So what did this gray alien look like? Could you describe him a little bit?
This one looked a little bit oriental.
So I'm just wondering if it looked almost human, what about this didn't look human?
No, it didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size.
How was its head size compared with a normal human, for example?
Brain was kind of a little bit bigger. And some of the nose was very, very small. And the ears were just like holes. Mouth was very small.
Now, why were they bringing you out here at all, anyway, to see an alien? What was the point?
To go back and tell the president they actually had one.
So he did not know at this point
No,
if there was an alien at S4.
no.
What did you do then at Area? Were you done, or did you have other things to do at
Yeah, so
S4?
basically we were kind of done, went back to Area 51. They took us into the main building, and there we saw a U-2, which of course we didn't know existed. And a model of the SR-71.
Yeah, the Blackbird.
So, but like I mentioned earlier, it was not a model of the current Blackbird.
It was an earlier version.
But an early version.
Did you go directly to Washington after this?
Yes.
Or did you go somewhere else? How did they get, did you fly
We
regular airline? Or
We flew back to the commuter plane back to the air base, and then took President Eisenhower's Lockheed Electra back to Washington.
you and your supervisor,
Yeah.
superior officer, and now you're meeting with the president?
Yes.
Can you describe this?
Well, we met with him in boy, the second story of the old OSS warehouse building. And Eisenhower and Nixon were there. And also Hoover was there. So he asked us what was going on. And we told him about the alien and the whole situation. And the black projects and so on. And he was just totally shocked. He appeared for the first time to be worried. You know, like he was worried.
I would think that Eisenhower would, I mean, he certainly knew that flying saucers were real.
Yes.
He knew that there were aliens. So I guess I'm just wondering, what would he have been, really surprised about?
Surprised about the black programs. Eisenhower said, got to keep this thing completely secret. You know, can't talk about this.
Your actual name is, the name you grew up with, that was a different name than what you
Yes.
had in the...
I never used it in the CIA at all.
Now, what about today? You're going on the public record, and this is still sensitive information, even though earlier you talked about, security oaths that maybe expire after a certain period of
50
time,
years.
but you're still concerned.
Linda Moulton Howell's phone call, her phone was tapped, and they got my phone number, and through the telephone company, they're able to find me, and so on.
When they found you, what happened?
I was going to a grocery store. Two guys in a black suits come out of a black Lincoln town car and came over to see me. And they told me that I better not publish anything or talk to Linda about any more things. So at that time, I did, I stopped.
That was enough to intimidate you.
Yes. Rather remain anonymous. Never show my face on anything.
Really, thank you for doing this.
Yes. This was, I guess, kind of a good idea because I feel much better having talked about it. I kind of feel like there's a load off my shoulders
Really.
because I had an awful lot of secrets that I had kept over the years.
See him like all
Draw a
the
small
movies.
gray.
Small gray. Damn.
That's not
Are these the aliens that you've seen?
That is not gray.
No, but
Which ones did you see?
yeah, these right here, the small grays. They have a little
They had a
slippery
mouth? How do they breathe?
They have nostrils, but they don't.
Do they breathe oxygen?
Yes, they can breathe oxygen. They the atmosphere on their planet is very similar, but it's a binary star system, so they have like two suns, which makes the air a lot drier. Their skin is their bones are more fragile than ours. But they kind of
So I can fucking.
they kind of look like that.
They don't want to fuck.
What's their body look like?
Their bodies, well, I've only
Do
seen
they
them-
walk around naked? Do they wear clothes? What do they do?
the chicks have boobs.
How do they
On their
fuck?
home planet. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Now, see, they didn't. I'm reading this that exchange program that Steven Spielberg explained at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind was really close to
Draw a female up there because I want to see if I fuck it.
well, I don't know. They look the same.
When special sport comes down,
How do you tell a male from a female?
your point.
They got fun bags.
No, not from what I.
So a mother.
Actually, EBE1 is a female. The one, was a female. She actually.
Draw the
died.
other one. This is the gray. Draw all three of them.
Do the girls have
Because I want to know which one I
What
want
do
to
the reptile ones look
Which
like?
one I'd fuck.
And then there's another one, which is actually a clone. These things created a clone, which looks something similar, but it
And
has
these
a
are
large
bad dudes?
pointy
They
nose.
cloned?
They have large, pointy noses, but they pretty much. Actually,
said they
there
live
was-
among us, huh?
There was another incident called the what was it? Hangar number 4 incident.
Squidward.
Okay.
Hangar number 4. And these right here are the tall whites, and
Yeah.
they're actually a clone created by the small grays.
Are they
They're like servants.
What's the angry? What's the angry ones look like? The reptile ones that you were talking about.
Yeah, fucking bad. The ones that we're gonna be fighting.
Yeah, they have smaller
Yeah, we
eyes.
actually saw those in Battle LA.
They had small eyes
Just in their
and
When they cut open their stomachs and found
They got
out that
weapons?
They didn't have a heart, just a core.
they had weapons.
They're
Do
kind of
they?
like an onion.
Do they have weapons?
layers.
But it's okay. She's a veterinarian.
Are
She
they-
can help.
Are they evil? Are the alien ones?
Or not?
They look like reptiles.
Not friendly?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. This is a very bad drawing, but the.
It's bad.
This is pretty good to me.
Those are dudes on Land and Lost, right?
How tall are those motherfuckers right there?
These guys right here,
Yeah.
and they're all humanoids, so they both walk on 2 legs. They all walk on 2 legs.
Well, I don't want to fuck that thing.
And this thing right
The
here.
first thing, and no, no, like the fucking first one I talked about.
This thing right here, this thing right here is huge. They're actually they're taller than us. They stand about 6 foot something on an average to 7 foot.
Are they are they like 230? What are they
They're
like?
huge. I don't know, but
They're gonna fuck me
the
up.
one
Full
image that I
range.
have seen of them, they're huge. Like they have a very strong build. Like,
But their bones are fragile.
no, not those.
This is going
The
on
small-
America's
the
Funniest
small.
Home Videos.
Well, what's up with the fucking big dudes? Like, what's their fucking planet like?
But this guy?
Yeah.
I don't know, but they.
How do they react? Can they breathe oxygen too?
These, yes, but these and these had a large war.
Okay, who won?
These guys, well, no, these guys won. They almost wiped these out, but
They had a soft spot.
So we should be more worried about
their
the blue
planet
ones.
was destroyed, so they had to go to Serpo. Which
Well,
is
this guy's
another-
got a fucking bunch of motherfucking clones. So.
How do you know that there was an alien war?
Because EVE1 said so.
I actually watched Star Wars.
What the fuck is EVE1?
It's the foreign. We
It's the
exchanged the
sur-
motherfucking.
It's
We did
the
like a foreign
surviving.
exchange program.
The
Yeah, we exchanged some
EVE1.
humans for some fucking aliens.
Have you guys
They
seen
took us
ET?
back to their fucking planet.
They
And
took
they
12
say,
of
Fuck
us.
you.
If you go online and look at under the Majestic 12, and actually, so President who was it? Told Steven Spielberg when that movie was made, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the president told Steven Spielberg that he hit the nail on the head, and pretty much with
Okay.
because at the end of the movie you can count them. They send
Are these
12 humans
motherfuckers
in
when
red.
this asteroid or whatever the fuck's gonna go on here pretty soon? Are these motherfuckers gonna come help us out, or what are they gonna do?
Well,
Nope,
This
they're still going
asteroid's
to be
supposed to
flying
end
around a wrecking
2016?
spaceship.
2012.
2012, December 21st, 2012.
The asteroid, that fucking.
The-
Okay.
okay, there was
Are
an
those
asteroid.
motherfuckers gonna come help us out?
Maybe Jesus
there's-
was an alien.
You know what? They said that's a very strong possibility. That he wasn't an alien, but he was. Our DNA has been altered 68 times since the caveman days.
Okay,
So-
Do you believe in
these
do you not believe in
motherfuckers are gonna
Jesus?
Come help us out.
I do.
'Cause
Do you
I
believe
gotta
he was an
fucking
alien?
Know if I need to send money or if I
I
need
don't
to spend my
know what kind of
money. What do
DNA
I
he
do?
had.
Do I
Are
buy
these
stocks
motherfuckers
or
gonna come
sell
help us
stocks?
out? Because if not, then I'll fucking blow all my money and shit and have a good fucking time.
Okay, well, the thing that they're calling an asteroid that's supposed to hit us and
Yeah.
destroy us was actually not an asteroid. It's a spaceship.
Holy shit, we're done.
It is. It was actually a spaceship of the reptilian kind, but it's since then.
So we're gonna
it's-
get invaded.
No, that's what they were talking about.
It's going to be a raid.
But
This
check
is
it out.
where this all ties into the military.
Iron Man and
Yeah, we have the
That's very
Avengers.
funny.
Yeah.
Thank God.
No,
Hey,
it
where are
was.
these motherfuckers at? Because if these motherfuckers are like within a couple years out, these motherfuckers are nowhere to be seen. What the fuck's going on?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're forming an alliance with them. We've actually sent 12 of our own to their planet, and they stayed there for 13 years.
How
It's
did we
supposed
get
to
our
be-
guys to
Does
there?
Obama know
They're
about
supposed
it?
to be set. I'm pretty sure he knows. I'm pretty sure all the presidents know something about it, but there's no telling.
Make these
Alright.
there's three
So,
pages. Make
This
the packets.
fucking a brown dwarf or whatever the fuck it is. It's not really a fucking.
Langfeld went off to his,
He got abducted by aliens, and he's telling us about what's gonna happen when the aliens attack.
Aliens are gonna invade. They were coming to invade us, but they've rerouted.
They are now?
They've rerouted.
So what's going on in 2012 now?
I don't know.
You gotta be up on this shit. You can't just be fucking like.
Are y'all really getting late started on his alien abduction?
Yes, it's
Dude,
awesome.
we're way past that shit.
They do something for that.
We're next level shit, guys.
Yeah.
We're talking about alien
I
wars and
just want to
shit.
determine if I should fucking just live my next 2 years up. Oh yeah, those are the reptilians.
Those are the big motherfuckers. Those are the bad ones.
But they're human.
Those guys are coming to invade
Yes.
us.
This is the Jewish aliens?
Yeah, those are
Those are the
Those are
clones.
clones.
Actually, they have other clones that they're creating that have like heads of dogs, but they only have like 3 fingers, and 3 toes.
Well, that's fucked up. Technology a little bit off there, huh?
Don't leave, Lee.
Maybe
Lee,
we
no.
clone some hot ass bitches and invade us with some fucking sluts.
Doors closed. This is what I wanted to hear. Let's hear feedback.
Motherfucker's crazy. No, that was him.
I believe it.
You believe everything that he said?
Oh yeah, me too. Definitely.
I'm gonna go get his story tattooed
I want those 4 pictures.
I want
If Tom Cruise believes this shit, I believe it.
This is going on YouTube. Say something.
That was bad. 8 minutes and 35 seconds.
That's exactly where I'm at right now.
That first picture of the alien went up there. I was like, you should put a picture of the alien that abducted you. You probably get kicked out of the army.
Yeah, well, actually, they fucking they fucking like cordoned off this fucking area. They all fucking like
Come in
all
with
these
black
shit
ops
and shit coming here. And they're like, what
Two
the
men
fuck?
in black
They're
bullshit.
like, all
They're
right,
holding up
everything you
little
just
laser
learned,
guns.
guys.
He started talking again. We gotta kill everybody.
This was about maybe 7 o'clock in the morning when I got up. And Dad said, or my brother phoned me from his farm, and he told me, you better swath all that canola down before it freezes up. So that's what I did. I went out to cut the canola. I went to the east end of the field, because the field was opened up the night before. There was rounds made around the field, but this was, I had to go to the east end and finish that little corner off. So on the way down, I cut the field in half and went right down the center where that big slough is sitting there. And coming upon the slough, I come across these dome-shaped objects in the field, and I didn't know what the hell they were, but somebody told me that American hunters use these for hunting geese, so I never thought too much of it. Driving to the slough with the swather, so I got a little closer and I stopped because everything was moving. I thought, well, gee, goose blinds don't move. They sit still. So I thought to myself, well, I might as well get off to see what this contraption is. So I got off on the ladder side of the swather and I walked towards him and I stopped about roughly 15 feet away from the object because I could see right underneath through it to the bottom. The grass was moving. And I thought to myself, what the devil is that contraption anyway? Because they weren't on the ground, they were off the ground. They're about a foot off the ground. And they were sitting there going around in a circle. They weren't standing stationary. I thought the machine was stationary, and it wasn't. It was going counterclockwise. The grass was going one way, and the machine was going the other way. So I walked a little closer. I wanted to really see what it was, but it was moving. And instinct told me to back up. So I backed up to stand about at least 15 feet away from him. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of odd. It's going the opposite way. It's going counterclockwise. It's not going clockwise. It's going counterclockwise. Grass was moving one way and the machine was going the other way. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. I thought, well, I wonder who the hell it is. Some joker probably playing a trick on me. And I was going to walk a little closer. Instinct told me to keep my distance. So I kept my distance and I walked around and looked at it. What the devil? There's another one on the other side. There were 3 in a row. One on the south side, about maybe 100 feet away. Another one on the north side, 100 feet away. And there was 3 in the center. All 5 machines. There was 2 on the end there. The 2 little ones were guarding the 3 big ones in the center. And it was sitting in a half moon shape. They were sitting like this, all in a circle, half moon position. The others were sitting here. They were sitting here and I was here. Coming down to turn around, I was about 15 feet away.
I know you've answered this question a million times, but it wasn't natural. It was a machine. These were machines.
It was a machine.
Yeah.
It was natural. It was metal. You could tell it was metal. And
So-
I wanted to go up to him and feel him, but instinct told me to keep my distance. Now you tell me, how in the hell they didn't land on the crop and they didn't land on the water? And right beside the crop, they didn't hit the crop nowhere, all the way around the field. There was one there, one this side, and 3 here. They never hit the slough, they hit the outline of the whole slough. The bigger ones were about 30 feet in diameter. They had a lip on them, like a bumper all the way around. And it was gray. Very hot at one time. When the metal was hot, and when it cools off, it gets gray. And that's the ring on that machine was gray. I'd say it was maybe about that far away from the dome because it was about that thick. And it was all the way around the bottom. And why was that end of the dome only gray and not the top end? I couldn't figure that one out. The rest of the machine was a shiny silver.
Like
the
chrome.
stainless. Yeah, I'd say they were stainless steel because it was brushed, looked like a brushed aluminum. That's what it looked like. And you could tell there was rivets all around because when it was turning, you could see the little bumps going around once in a while. If you'd blink, you could see the bumps. Because you watch something in a fan, you look at a fan and you blink, you could make out the whole description of the fan. And when you're standing there watching with your eyes open and you go, don't blink, you can't make out what that looks like. You blink, you can make exactly what that fan looks like. It's like this, straight across. But this is the dome of it, right here.
So it was sectional like that?
Yeah, oh yeah. It was because you could tell the lip on this side was hot at one time. And up here there was just like rivets going around it all the way around. All you could tell, there was some compartments, but you couldn't make out what they were. And now, you know, you blink and you could see rivets. They were round. Had round tops on them. And they were going around. There was some in the top, some in the center, some in the bottom. The outside dome was chrome and that foot thing was gray. And the bottom machine had 4 pipes and they were huge. They weren't small. They were all in around the outside. And that's what I think made that impression in the ground because it was turning. I said, the machine is brushed stainless steel. That's what it looks like. And I said, it's as shiny as could be. And it's that bottom lip is about a foot wide and it is not shiny. It looked like it was hot at one time. What I couldn't figure out why they were so close together. You couldn't get your hand between the 2 of them. But when you noticed this, you know, I was standing there and I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Your mind is trying to get this thing all unraveled, but it doesn't unravel. God, I was scared. I was just thinking to myself, they just come towards me. I'm history. And there was 5 of them, and there was only 1 of me. And gee whiz, you started to think. I was scared stiff. I didn't know what to do. You know, if somebody would have just clapped your hands, I think I would drop dead right there. I was so scared. But you know, it's mind-boggling the way it works. It's really mind-boggling. So instinct told me when I walked up to the machine to back up. Because have you ever had instinct tell you this? You walk up to the back end of a combine and there's something turning. And instinct will tell you to back up right away. It won't let you get closer. Or touch something that is turning. You stick your hand into a fan, would you? Instinct will tell you keep your distance. That's what it'll tell you right away. And a lot of guys says, well, how could you tell that? I said that something in the back of my head was telling me, keep my distance, stay back, dangerous. So you keep your distance. And it was cold. I had a parka on that day, gloves on, caps with flaps down, and it was so cold, I was shaking. And then you get towards this goddamn machine that's standing there, I was just gritting my teeth. What the devil could that damn thing be? And it's not a goose blind, because I know what they look like. And I said, well, this damn sucker's turning. Why would it be turning?
Did you hear anything?
No, no sound.
No sound.
No sound. All I could hear was the swaths running, and that, when you walk up to something, your mind goes blank. Because you're so scared that everything seems to... I had this echoing sound in my ears, and I thought, well, the swather ain't running anymore. What the hell? And it disappears out of your mind. Your mind is like a picture. It just stops. And I thought to myself, now what the devil? So I thought, you got all kinds of things going through your head, and you're standing there and thinking. And then all of a sudden, your mind tells you better back up and go to that swather and get back on and get the H out of here. And I thought to myself, well, I better get on the swather. I backed up all the way to the swather, backwards. I didn't take my eyes off the object. And I got on the wheel side of the swather. And you think the swather would move? Engine was dead. Because when I got off, the engine was running. It wouldn't start, the ignition was dead. It was completely dead. And the engine was running when I got off of it. Because the ignition key was turned over to the side. And I tried it and it just would not start. So I'm sitting there waiting. No, thinking what the hell to do. What are you going to do? And that damn thing comes towards you. I'm telling you, I was so scared I didn't know. The whites, I could imagine my gloves, the whites, you could see all your knuckles, because I was sitting there just gritting my teeth trying to move, and I couldn't. So it was cold, and I was sitting there. I don't know how long I sat on that spot. I thought to myself, well, the gate is closed over there. How the hell, if I ever get this contraption started, I ain't going to stop. I'm going to go straight through that gate, and I'm not getting off. And it wouldn't move. It just would not move. It was frozen, like somebody just froze it to the ground. It would not. The engine wouldn't go. So I sat there maybe, I don't know, half an hour, maybe an hour. And all of a sudden, the sucker started to lift off the ground. Now, they were going up slowly in a step formation. The big one, like the three big ones in the center, took off first, and then the little ones followed. And they were just right over top of my head. And I thought to myself, well, now what the hell am I going to do? You look up, what the hell, now they're over top of my head, and that's going on in your mind. And you look up, and I said, no, they're too damn close. They're closer now than they were before. And you could see the whole bottom of that machine. Boy, what an outfit. I wonder who the hell makes that. That's the one right there. But the dome could be a little more pointed. It was...
So there wasn't... Was there an opening on the body?
On the bottom it was open. It was...
like a vent?
Like vents. There was about 4 of them. Here there was one in that corner, one in this corner, one over there, and one over here. There was 4 of them. That's all I remember. But they were huge. Now, they weren't small pipes. To me it looked like it was their way of maneuvering the machine, moving it. But when they were above my head, I couldn't figure this out. They were straight down. And how the hell they get from that slough over my head? I was 15 feet away, so they had to move over. So what drove them over sideways? And you try to figure this all out. It doesn't make sense. And then I thought to myself, maybe those pipes, they moved or something, at an angle to get the machine to move over. The pattern was like...
can you draw the underside of those things?
The underside was... Well, let's say a round circle like this, and it was round deals like this all the way around. There were portholes, actually. And when you look underneath them, there was more than 4, because when I looked at from the side of it, it looked like there was 4. But there's more. I can't remember now, is it 6 or 7? There was a pile of men, but they all turned according to what that looked like when you look from the bottom up. And you know how the machine looked like in the bottom? It was like molded. You couldn't tell if there was bolts or whatever underneath. It wasn't. But it was like that all the way around. And they were on the outside only. The center had a big circle. That's all it had. And there was nothing out of there. But I can still see that as plain as day. I have nightmares about this bottom part. And then I thought, well, I better see if that swather's going to start. Still wouldn't start. Everything was dead. So I sat there some more, and they were sitting on one spot. They were just hovering there on one spot over the top of my head. And the crop, it was flattened right out. You know, there was crop on either side of me. And it was the pressure from the objects that were these machines running, you couldn't tell what the hell it was. It was just, all you could see was like when they got higher up, it was like a vapor, like you see behind a jet plane, a vapor, but you couldn't see it that clear. It was more like a fog, you know, it was thinner.
Do you think that was just the air, or was that something that the vehicle was pumping out?
Well, it come out of the ports, you know, it come out of these ports, the vapor. It was actually going down. As the thing rose up, it was pushing this vapor down. But
and did it look?
I couldn't feel anything. That's what I couldn't figure out.
Did it look like smog? Did it look?
Well, yeah, something like it.
Blue, gray, or
how when it hits the ground, it sort
Yeah.
of flares out.
Yeah.
That's what it was doing. But you couldn't feel anything, and you held your hands out like this, but you couldn't feel nothing. And I thought to myself, what the devil is that contraption? I still didn't know about these UFOs. I never even took a thought it was a UFO. But sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden they started to go slowly, and they just took off as a flash. They were gone, and they went to the northeast end of the sky. Man, when they took off, you'd have blinked, you'd have missed them. I was holding on to that swather for dear life. See, it wouldn't have got me off there for no money. But I had to take the swather up too. See, the crop was flat. Why was the crop flat? It was standing up. When as soon as they were got the crop come up, what was pushing the crop down? What I don't get, because I couldn't feel anything. The wind, but yet the crop was still down. They were gone in just a wink of the... You winked and you would have missed them. So then the swather started, and I thought, thank God it took off, and I didn't stop. I went straight for the house. And my mother said, well, what the devil took you so long? Dinner time's at 12 o'clock, you know. And I didn't know how to tell her this. Well, I said I was sort of watching something in a slough, not too far from the house. And Dad was reading the newspaper at the other end of the room. We had the house was there was a breakfast nook on the far end, and that's where he was sitting reading the newspaper. And he looks at me and says, "What was it?" Well, you know, I sort of didn't want to tell him. I was sort of nervous, and then I told him. I said it was some kind of object from I don't know where, but they're not there no more. Well, what happened to them? I said, they took off. Well, where did they go? I says, how the hell would I know? They went straight up. That's all I know. And he says to me, were they flying saucers? What's a flying saucer? I didn't know what that was. He read it in the German paper years ago, that these objects were flying around in Canada and foreign countries. And he told me about it. Can you go and look? I says, I don't care, go and look. And Mom was at the telephone. She had phoned my sister. They were going to butcher an animal next day.
The first I heard about is when my mother called. Ruth, something terrible happened. I says, what do you mean? Well, she says Edwin was home for lunch, and he didn't look very good, and he said he saw these circles in the, or these things. They were like flying saucers, and he showed with his hands, you know, how they were shaped and that. And he said there were 5 of them, and then of course my dad didn't believe him. He says, oh, come on. And he says, yes, and he couldn't eat his lunch. And so then, and then this is what my mother was telling me, and she didn't know what to say. And, well, I says, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, it just didn't make sense to me. She says he saw something out there, and he was really scared. I think it scared him half to death. And I says, well, what was it? And she says, I don't know. She says, if it was a plane, it wasn't a plane. I says, well, was it an airplane maybe? She said, no.
And Ron Moyer happened to be over there at the house in town here.
And she says to my sister, a helicopter had landed in the slough. And I was hollering from the table. I says, no, it wasn't no helicopter. And well, you know how older people are, they don't pay attention to what you're saying. So Ron Moyer, he was out there, and then about a half an hour later, out at the farm. And he says to Dad, let's go out to the slough and have a look and see what there really was out there. And they went, and I went and took the swather, had the swather sitting by the house. And I drove out where I left off, and I went back and forth. They were crawling around in that slough all day long. And I stopped the swather and I asked him, I said, what are you guys looking for here anyway? Well, you never know, they could have dropped a pen. I says, how do you know they had one?
Were you able to figure out if he was just farting around, if it was just...
No, he wasn't farting around. I never disbelieved him. All was unexplainable, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the facts for what they were, the pictures, the grass, all of that is, you know, it's all what it was. And for me to say, you know, to solve that and say, yeah, it was definitely this, I couldn't do that, you know.
All you could see in the slough was like a tripod like you got here. The marks were in the slough, in the grass. And all you could see was these marks, and like somebody was walking around. A tripod step going into that object. But there was tracks all around the machine. There was footprints around that spacecraft. But you know, they're not footprints, they're just, you know, marks in the grass, that's all it is. And that was high grass.
And which one of these had the tracks around it, the stomping?
This one here, the front one. That was sitting on that side had the tripod track on it, like the door actually opened on it. So that machine had to be sitting stationary to open.
Okay, so it had stopped spinning, and there was something triangular.
Yeah, sitting there.
Right there.
Mm-hmm. Huh. And they can't explain this to me. The scientists, they checked that all out, and they don't know. All they know that they said it was a door that was opened on the side of the spacecraft. Because it was a tripod. The front leg was here, the two on this side, and it was open. Those tripods sitting right there was open, so you could see there was something was out because the grass was bent down.
And they walked around.
Yeah.
Just around here.
Just around that front part. There was nowhere else. The grass was all standing up on that side. Just on this one side over here. There was about 30 feet across the middle. They were big, huge. Oh. And there was three of them sitting like they looked like one machine because they were bumped together so close. And I said, well, how did... Because I said to Ron Myers, what do you think that really was? Devil only knows, that's all he kept saying. I says, I don't know. Why are you saying devil only knows? Well, he says, where were they from? I says, gosh, don't ask me. I didn't stop to ask him. I didn't even get close enough to him. Because instinct told him to keep my distance. He says, what do you think it is? I says, I don't know what it is. Why are you asking me this? I'm asking you. You're the cop. You're supposed to be investigating this. And he says, well, I can tell you what they were, but you won't believe me. Well, I says, I have to. I says, I'm the only guy that's seen them. You never seen them. I seen them live. You know, the machine was turning and everything. But they're not here now. But I says, you maybe watch them in the sky because they flew northeast.
Whatever he saw was there, and they came from above and they left via the same route. He saw something.
And I said to the RCMP, I says, you know, in the northeast of the sky, there is red lights. Red, orange, yellow, green, all kinds of colors of lights. And they're not sitting still, moving back and forth. He says, what do you think they are? I says, I don't know. I'm asking you that. You're the policeman. Well, he says, why are you asking me? I don't know that either. He's not asking you what they are. I says, I haven't got a clue. And my dad told him, he says, they're unidentified flying objects. And this went on, you know, for maybe 5-10 minutes. And I had just told him, I says, I can't sit there and talk. I have to take off and swath this field. And I got to get it swathed by the day's over. And there was 190 acres there. And so I got that field swathed. Ron Moyer says, now what the devil are we going to do? He says, don't look at me. I can't do nothing. I said, well, isn't the RCMP supposed to do something? Fence this place off? How do you know it's not radioactive? Oh, he says, I never thought of that. And it was. We had a guy out from Winnipeg, Manitoba, was a Geiger counter. It was radioactive bad. It just, that machine just rattled when it went into the red. You should have seen the faces on some of those policemen, and they were walking around in those spots. Then those other cover RCMP from Regina come out with German Shepherd dogs. They would not go into those circles. They wouldn't go near. You couldn't get those dogs to go in that circle for no money. I had a little mongrel dog. He wouldn't go close to the slough. The cattle wouldn't go close to it. And people were walking around in there. What I don't get is how they knew the difference between the water and the land. They didn't land in the water, and the water was 2 feet from the edge of the slough. They didn't land in the crop. You tell me, how do they know the difference? See, the crop on the east side of the field wasn't sown right against the slough. There was a blank spot in between, and that's where the grass was growing up, and it was 4 feet high in there. And I said to a lot of guys, and I said, how the hell do they know the difference between water and land? No, you're up that high, you come down. How the hell do they know where to land? But I guess they did. They never landed in the water, weren't even close to it. And I said that to the RCMP. Lots of guys would stand there and scratch their head, they didn't know what to answer. I said, well, they didn't land in the crop, and they didn't land in the goddamn slough, in the water. How they could tell the difference between the crop and the slough? The canola, there was a canola field right beside, did not land in the canola. They were right beside it, but not in it. You lie in bed and you think about this, you close your eyes, you can see the whole thing in front of you. And it's, I don't know, it's branded into my fingers and all over. It's a lot of people says, well, how can you keep thinking about it? I says, once in a while you do. You sit down and you just think about it. How the hell did they get down here? And we're trying to get where they are. We'll never get there where they are. You can't plan an outing just to see these machines. You gotta end up seeing them by accident, like I did. Well, by accident. What do you mean by accident? Well, I was swathing here, and I come along, I was going to turn the swath around, and the fetal nerve sitting there. They're sitting right in my path. How can I turn around? Is this all true? Well, I said, if it's a lie, I said, you can expect to see something else coming up if it's a lie. And they said, if it's a lie, you'll have to call the RCMP liars then. Oh, the RCMP is involved. I said, you better believe it. I said, there's not just me, there's United States. The Air Force come flying in with 6 planes, aircrafts, which flew over the slough from every angle taking pictures. And I says, well, the Canadian Air Force was in there, the Navy was in there, the Army was in there. Now, well, who are you going to call liars here? You think it was a lie? I don't think so, because your eyes don't deceive you, you know. That's what I saw. I saw. What you don't have to believe me. I don't care what you believe. But what I saw was real. I says, when you were sitting on a swather and it does not move off the spot, there's something got to be haywire here. I wouldn't want to go through it again, never again. Because your bones, they ache like you had electrical shock. My joints, I couldn't move hardly. For about 2 weeks, it bothered me.
What I've shared with you here is just a small sliver of a large body of information that I have. I haven't talked about the science, the radioactivity of the site, the craziness of humanity that surrounded the farm and Edwin in the years after his story went public. I talked to Edwin's entire family. They all confirmed that his story is true and he wouldn't lie about what happened that day. I also talked to retired Constable Ron Moyer, who was the initial reporter on the event. Even if you discount everything he said, that still doesn't explain what happened in 1989 when the objects returned, this time hovering over an elementary school. The children who were out for recess and the teacher who witnessed it reported that the objects were exactly as Edwin had described, only they were shining brightly.
I think they backtracked for 6 months. So whoever took it, not only did they take it out of circulation, but they went in the database and they erased it. And I'm serious about this. I enlisted in the Marine Corps under the delayed entry program in July of 1994. And I graduated Mount Tabor High School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina in June of 1995. And I enlisted, of course, delayed entry a year. So I went to boot camp on the 18th of June, which is a Sunday. I went to boot camp. I graduated 8 September of 95. And from there, my MOS was 0311, which was a grunt. And from there, I went to School of Infantry training at Camp Geiger in late September of 95. I did not complete training because I was injured and I hurt my back, and I was sent to the medical platoon there on Camp Geiger, North Carolina, which is adjacent to Camp Lejeune. And I was there, I don't know, for about a month or 2 months. And in late January of 96, I was given new orders and given a new MOS, military occupational skill, listing as 7212 Stinger Avenger Gunner, and subsequently given 10 days leave and then sent to Fort Bliss at El Paso, Texas. So I was in training to be an air defense gunner on the FIM 92 Alpha Stinger missile. It's a surface-to-air missile, and the Avenger weapon system, which is a pedestal and a turret with 8 Stingers mounted on the back of a Humvee. And I was in training for February to late May of 96. And then after graduating from that school, I was reassigned my first duty station, 2nd Marine Air Wing, 28th Marine Air Control Group, 2nd Low Altitude Air Defense Battalion, Cherry Point, North Carolina. And I was assigned a Battery B in June of 96. And I went on several operations, we call them ops for short. And basically, I was there, and then I was transferred over to the section for Laser Strike in February of 97. After going to Weapons and Tactics Instructor 197 in Yuma, Arizona. When I got back, I was asked if I wanted to go, and I said sure, so I volunteered, and I was sent to the section. Then we shipped out in March, of that year. We were sent there to provide perimeter security to this radar installation. Basically, this radar station was tracking supposedly drug aircraft that were exiting in and out of Peru and Bolivian airspace. Basically, what we were doing there, we had live ammo and weapons. And one day, Sergeant Allen and the other sergeant, and I'll remember his name soon, Sergeant Atkins. They were, and Sergeant Montalegre, and he was a staff sergeant, E7, E6. The other guys were E5 sergeant, and they came to us and said, look, we got a situation where we have an aircraft crash that's possibly friendly, and they need us to go and secure the crash site. And we're like, fine. So this is early. This is late at night. I know about 11 or 12 at night, and I was on guard duty that night, so I was already up, and it was my shift. We have 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off, and where we rotate our section. So we all went out that night. We got up, 3 or 4 in the morning and headed out in Humvees. We had about 5 or 6 Hummers, and we drove to where we needed to go, and then from there, we had to hump through the bush. So we got there, 6, 7, just when daylight had just started to get light. And we found the area really easy because there was a huge gash in the land where something had crashed, and it didn't break anything. I don't know if you've ever been to a crash site where you had trees just broken like in half. Everything was burned, and it was like if you had almost cut like a warm butter with a knife. I mean, it was just it's like something on fire or had or some kind of energy, like a laser almost had like gutted. I mean, it was really strange. And anyway, I was in the front with Sergeant Allen and Sergeant Atkins. We were up front, and we were point basically, and we were like, I don't know, 10, 20 meters ahead of everyone else. We all had maps and radios and compasses, so we knew so we wouldn't get lost. And basically, we were the first ones to see the object. And basically, what happened is we didn't go straight up the hill, because basically this thing went up the hill and then off into the side of the ravine or the ridge. This is about a 200-foot ridge at least. Solid granite. I mean, it's rock. I don't know if it's granite. It was buried in the side of the cliff. But anyway, we didn't go straight up. We went on to the left and walked up to the top of the ridge. And that's when we saw the craft. This is a huge ship, and you know, I used to be into sci-fi movies when I was a kid, but this is nothing like I'd ever seen. And when I first saw it, you know, I was scared. It scared the heck out of me. You know, I didn't know what to do, and it was just it was really confusing. So we all climbed down, and it was buried for about a 45-degree angle and into the side of the side of the cliff there, the ridge. And I mean, this is a steep cliff. I mean, it's straight up and down, and it was dripping this like syrup viscosity, this liquid. It was everywhere, all down, everywhere when we went down there, because there was plants and everything. And it was weird. It was a purplish green color, and it was a greenish purple. And it kind of like fluctuated. Like you couldn't really, when you'd look at it one time, then you look at it again, and it would it's almost like I don't know if it was like alive and it was just changing, but every time you looked at it, you saw a different shade of greenish purple. It was strange. There was one light on it that slowly went around, and the machine, I could hear it. I guess because it was still functioning, and it had like a hum to it, like a really bass. Like, say if you unplugged an amp from a guitar, that kind of, you know, it was really, you know, it was really deep, and it kind of fluctuated, and then finally it just cut off, and everything just seemed to stop, except the colors and the shades, and it was still that way. When I was looking at the craft, it was buried, so I could see the back of it, and there were these large vents. Well, they look like vents, sort of like a fish gill on the back. I couldn't see around the other side. And I guess I'm assuming it was the same way on the other side. That looked like, I don't know, that could have been used for propulsion. I'm not sure. Again, this liquid that had come out of the ship it got on my camis, and you know it discolored them and ate them almost like acid. And then it ate some of the skin off, the hair off my arms, and and I didn't know that until later on. But basically, when I was down there with the ship, there was 3 holes. And I guess I'd assume that they were hatches, but there's no way to tell. They were not flush with the body, the main body of the craft. They're, I don't know, a few inches below. I knew there was one on top because you could slightly see it. I don't know about the other side, but there was another hatch, the same width and diameter or whatever of the top hatch, and it was kind of crooked to the side, and it was half open. And I didn't see any lights or anything coming out of it. But I felt this presence that it's real strange. I guess it was almost like, I think I told Leslie this, I thought the creatures they conned me, and it was like weird, and I think they were trying to communicate with me, like, I guess telepathically. It's really weird, and I don't believe in any of that stuff. But anyway, it was, I could hear, like, and it was terrible because it kept going, and then it still comes and goes. It's like basically sitting in your car and turning on like an AM station that's not, you know, it's just white noise, and it's turning it up really high. And that's what I heard when I first got in there. This is pretty crude 2-dimensional drawing, but this is jungle here, and this was the craft, and it was embedded in the rock like this. And I'm not sure if this tapered off or how it went, but these right here are the hatches, these 2 objects here. This one was the one that was half open, and you could see into it, but I mean, it was just black. It was like looking into a closet. 10 meters in width and about 20 meters in length. I'm just not sure. That's just an estimate from what I remember. But it was huge. I mean, it was big, man. and it was shaped like almost like between an egg and like a teardrop almost. It looked really aerodynamic, at least in the shape. But the closer I was close enough to take out detail on it that it was not just smooth. There was bumps and notches and things in it. It was really organic. It was almost like art. That's really how you would. It didn't look like something that somebody made in a shop. It didn't have that clunkiness or that tin can kind of deal. It was more of art. I would say. It looked to be that it could have been handmade, but out of what and what materials I don't know. Definitely nothing like titanium. It wasn't. See, this is the whole thing. It looked metal, but it didn't have any reflection on it, man. I mean, the sun's coming down, and if you got something made of metal, regardless of it, I mean, maybe if it's subdued with paint and it's got a cami sheen on it, you're not going to see any reflection. But I could see the different shades of the craft. They didn't shine. It just like it was. It didn't reflect anything, and I guarantee if I'd have thrown like a flashlight on it, it wouldn't have reflected it. Well, the creatures, I think, were calling me to help them. Everything was going to be all right. And I was so mesmerized and into it, and Sergeant Allen and Atkins, they're hollering, they're cussing at me, get the hell out of there.
Why?
Well, I think they lied. I think that they were scared, and they didn't want me to get hurt. I don't know. They were real pissed off at me after subsequently. But basically, what happened was after we climbed back up, I think the DOE, Department of Energy people were there. They knew about it, and I don't know why we went there still to this day. But anyway, I was arrested. I had all my gear taken from me by men in black camis, had no name tags. They were older men, probably in their late 30s or 40s. How long was I at the site? Probably about 15, 20 minutes. We were the first people on the position, yeah.
And then shortly you said there were other people.
Right, there were other people. I guess they were government. I don't know. They were there, and they had containment suits, and they had guys. They had a position that looked like, I don't know if it was already there or there was some gap in the jungle where they landed 2 CH-47 Chinooks. They're Army twin rotor helicopters, and they're big, and they had guys coming out in these containment suits. They must have just got there, I don't know, while we were down in the gorge, because when we climbed up, there those guys were. There were the guys in the black camis. And then they put me on a cot that they had, and they had me cuffed with those, they had me cuffed both hands down, and then they had my legs tied together with those plastic fasteners that the police use. I don't know, they're like kind of like cuffs. And then they took me in the CH-47, and they sent me to, we took off, and they didn't drug me or anything like that, and I was just awake there. And
did they explain why they were treating you this way?
No, they said that that they were cussing at me, saying that I was a dumb asshole, and that why don't you fucking people ever pay attention to orders, and you weren't supposed to be there, and you're not supposed to see this, and you're going to be dangerous if we let you go, and all this stuff. Man, I thought they were going to kill me for about 2 days, I think. And they had a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and he did not identify himself. He might have, I just don't remember. And he told me, if we just took you out in the jungle, they'd never find you out there. And I'm like, well. And, I didn't want to say, I didn't want to test him to see if he'd really do that. So I said, yeah. And he's like, you got to sign these papers, and you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened. And if you tell anybody, you'll just come up missing. And he was a real abrasive, just a cynical asshole, I guess is the best way to put it. I was at the same installation, but they had me segregated with Air Force personnel for like 3 weeks, and then after that I was sent back, approximately. All I saw there was Americans, and there's a lot of other nationalities there, Chinese, Germans I think were there, and a lot of other people were at this other base. But this thing, it was really, I didn't go in, and all they did was take me to like a, you couldn't call it a cell, it was more of like it was more like an interrogation room, and I sat in there for, I don't know, 15 hours. Those guys with a light. I mean, they put this light in my face, and they were yelling at me, and I couldn't really readily identify any of these guys, but I knew one of them was at the crash site, because they were one of the guys that I recognized, because he was in black fatigues, and he was like, "What'd you see?" And he's like, "Yeah," he's like growling. You know, he goes, "Are you a patriot? You like the Constitution?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, we do it, you know, we're on our own program, you know, we don't obey, we just do what we want." And he's like, "Yeah." And they're like, and they're growling and they're relishing, you know, and they're yelling at me and they're hollering and cursing, and you didn't see anything, you know, and we'll do you and your whole goddamn family. And they're you know, it was basically that for about 8 or 9 hours. I mean, they took breaks. They were like, "Look, man, we're gonna take you off in a helicopter and just kick your ass out in the jungle, and we're gonna end you and all this." And they didn't physically put their hands on me, but I was sitting in a chair and I was handcuffed to the chair and I couldn't move. So basically, you know, it was just this like harassment. I didn't eat anything for like a whole day. No water, no nothing. I just sat there. My section was about 8 to 10 guys.
And they all saw it?
No, just me, Sergeant Allen, and Sergeant Atkins were the only ones that saw it. Now, they saw the crash, and, well, at least, you know, the jungle where it came through, they saw all that, but they didn't go into the ridge. Because, like I said, we were 10 to 20 meters in front of them, and they radioed to Hall that we found it and everything's fine. It was in late March, early April of '97. So we're talking, like when I got back, you know, I approached Sergeant Allen about it, because of course he's married and he's got like 1 or 2 kids, and I went to his house on base housing, and he got all upset and threw me out of his house, said he didn't want to talk about it. And I mean, I guess they scared those guys too, man. And see, I mean, you got to understand, you know, I can't speak for the rest of the armed service, but the Marine Corps, it's monolithic. And when they're told to do something, they're gonna do it. And if you don't want to go along, they'll basically railroad you. I didn't want to keep my mouth shut about it, and I told my First Sergeant Powell. I told him about it, and I don't even know I don't think he's still there anymore. I mean, we're talking 3 years ago. So yes, there was life forms in the ship. It's almost like if someone was like reading your mind, and that's the way it felt. And I felt like I felt a presence. It was like supernatural, you know. It was no debris that I saw, but there were big gashes in the rear of the aircraft. And what it looked like is that it had been hit with maybe a surface-to-air missile. There were a couple Hawk batteries, and that's a homing all the way killer. That's a low to medium surface-to-air anti-aircraft missile. And basically, it doesn't have to hit the target in order to destroy the target. What it does is it gets in proximity of it, and it has a high explosive fragmentation warhead, and it basically explodes like a big shotgun in the vicinity of the targeted area. And by fragmentation, it's supposed to destroy the target or damage it so it won't be able to continue its mission. So I think we shot it down. This is what I think happened: is we shot it down. The Peruvians shot it down. The other guys knew it was flying. I knew that these aircraft were flying because I had been in the command center there at the radar installation, and I heard a couple women there in the Air Force talking about aircraft flying in and out of the atmosphere at Mach 10 plus. So these aircraft are flying around there. They're re-entering the atmosphere and whatever. And I believe that the higher ups knew it was flying in the area. These were these large vents. They looked like they went into the craft, but I couldn't tell. But it was a shadow. That was the only thing that really cast a shadow. The rest of this, well, this was another thing, was these vents casted a shadow where you could see where there wasn't light, but the sun was shining right on the object, and it didn't cast a shadow, not on anything, and it was like kind of like absorbing the light. It was weird. This is not one of ours, because in Stinger school they teach you about all different kinds of aircraft and stuff like that, and I knew a lot of aircraft anyway, because I like reading about aircraft and data and that stuff. And well, essentially when I saw it, I'm like, man, this is nothing that I know of. Okay, basically the radar was sitting, and this was again on a hill. it's cammied up, and it rotates and everything. And there's a command bunker that was built under the earth, and I mean it looks like Star Wars in there. And I mean it's total air conditioned. I mean it's really nice. And there's like computers, and they got the control panels and everything that control the radars. And I guess they're linked to other sites, and they get other data coming in. And well, we had guard duty, and and the night that this happened, this was in the early evening, and it was my shift, and I was in there, and I was checking people going in and out. They got ID, checking out, whatever. So like these two girls, they come walking out, and they were talking about, well, we got these aircraft flying again, and the other girl says, yeah, they're coming in and out of the atmosphere. But he came in there, and he told me to come back with him, and we go back there, and he goes, I want the logs, because they log all these flights coming in, their bearing, what they are, what code they're squawking, all that. So he gets the books, and I had to sign off for him to take all that. I mean, when you got objects that are re-entering the atmosphere and then stopping on a dime and then turning around and going exactly the opposite direction, that's kind of strange. Meteors don't do that.
Now, is this something that was rare or something that was happening?
Oh, this is happening all the time. There's like 3 or 4 incidents where I was duty there that the same Air Force officer came in there to get books.
And do you think these were tracked on radars?
Yeah, these were tracked from this particular radar that were logged in. The reason, I guess the reason they were taking them is they didn't want people to know that they're tracking these aircraft. I guess, I mean, again, I'm just assuming that. So, yeah, I think they knew it was coming in, and they said, we can't identify it. It's violating airspace, so they could have radioed the Peruvians and said, take them out, and then they shot it down. I was confident that when I saw the aircraft, it had been hit by something that had took it out. They were scared, and it was the apprehension, the fear, and then that they were not here to harm us. That's really what it felt like. And I mean, that's not my own emotions. I've seen the creatures in my thoughts, and I saw them what they look like: oval egg head with big dark eyes, big eyes, a nose and a small mouth, no ears.
And they were projecting that they weren't here. They were here.
They were here they weren't here, they were not going to harm me. And that was basically that everything was going to be all right. Just help us get out of here. I think there was, I don't know how many were on the craft.
You got the sense more than one.
Yeah, definitely more than one. Probably about 4 or 5. Did I think it was organic and alive? Yeah. I think that. That whole craft, it's kind of like, it's almost like if you had an extension like your arm or your leg. And I think the way they can, now, I mean, this is just from thinking about it, that the way they control the craft is with their thoughts. And they have no buttons or anything they push. It's not from Earth. And I mean, I knew that when I looked at it, I mean, I'm not doing this to make money or publicity or anything, but I think it needs to be told, and I think people need to hear it. Whether they agree with me or not is of no consequence. Their cover was there to track drug aircraft. I think, I don't know, but from what I understand, that they were doing a whole lot more than just tracking drug aircraft. I mean, they had laser range finders and all kinds of high-tech stuff that I've never seen before, and I couldn't really explain. I know that there was a couple of LRFs there. I don't know what they were, LRF laser rangefinder. I don't know what they had those do there, but they were huge, man. Looked like big telescopes, but they had them in a bunker, and it was able to rise up, and they can zoom around, and I saw them doing that. I mean, just a bunch of weird stuff. And then, not even that, we had like a live fire shoot in the jungle, and there was Green Berets, Army Airborne, I mean, a bunch of these Spec Ops guys, Delta Force there, the murderers at Waco were there, so... all these guys out there. I mean, the Chinese are there. They're out there training, man, and they're training the Peruvians too. So it's weird, man. Weird situation. Oh, this is definitely something like NATO or some multinational deal. And what I keep going back and really thinking about that. Why are all these guys here? Why would the Chinese be concerned with drugs being smuggled or any kind of drug paraphernalia being smuggled into the States. I mean, personally, I mean, I know for a fact that our government are the ones that are importing drugs. I mean, you know, but the fact, do I think that this command center, I think it was permanent. I think it's been in operation for a while. They had the big D, you know, Delta Oscar Echo on the back of a couple of the guys were wearing like these rain jackets because it had been raining the previous day, and they were in there, and there were other guys that were wearing containment, like biological suits. It wasn't like that. It was more high tech, like those big jump suits that you zip up the back and you can like wear a breathing apparatus in there. Those guys, there was about 30 of them at least, and they marched right by me as I was being taken away. They were marching to get down into the cliff. I guess they were in there to check this thing out. What do I think happened? I think they went in there and they took everything out and they shipped it back home, I think. The behavior of the people, yeah, this is routine, man. I mean, these guys are squared away. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been trained to do this stuff before. That was the atmosphere, the total professional, cold, unassuming nature. You know, it's just, you know, we're here to do a job and, you know, get the fuck out of our ways is basically the attitude. I was raised in a Christian home to believe that there was a God and that He created everything, you know, the universe, and here they are, these creatures that I've never seen before, never come in contact with, and this happens, man, and it made me go almost crazy, you know, not like suicidal, but I just couldn't. I had to like reevaluate everything that I knew. It's sort of like when you're a kid, you know, you've been told Santa Claus is you know real, and then you find out that he's really not, and the Tooth Fairy, you know, it's like now that you know, there's no going back. There's no denial. There's no saying, well, you know, this is, you know, I didn't really see this, and I couldn't really deal with it. You know, is that what do I do? You know, do I tell people? But I mean, who's going to believe that a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps in the middle of the fucking jungle is going to see an aircraft like this? It's more like I was sitting and watching like a film, like I was sitting and I was watching what was happening, and I was basically, you know, with these aliens, these creatures, and they were touching me. You know, not like sexually or with instruments or anything. They were holding my hands, and they had their hands on me. And they only had 4 fingers, by the way.
And what feeling did you get from them?
It was a warm, like loving feeling, like you would have if you were with a family. These creatures are like, I guess you could, probably the closest thing I could say that they were like almost like angels. And if I had to, I'd go with them right now. I mean, I'd get, and I had this obsession with that, you know, I guess because of the pain of the experience and then the Marine Corps, that I just wanted to escape, you know, and I was thinking about, you know, being with these creatures a lot and wanting to go with them and wanting to get out of here. Because these different agencies are just on their own. They don't obey the law. They're rogue, you know, they're just off on their own. Do I think this is a project that goes up through the government and everyone has a piece in it? No. I think these guys just operate on their own. No one knows what they do. These guys, they're just off on their own. There's no oversight, no control, and they just do whatever they want. They don't, I mean, and they're evil, man. These people are evil. You know, do I think it goes to Bill Clinton and to the Congress? There may be guys up there that know about it. They're not going to say anything, man. If they say anything, you know, they're through, you know. For those of you who don't know, and I knew Marine snipers that, I've heard other guys talk about it, and I've heard that these guys, you know, they go on the streets and they stalk people and they kill them. I know that that Army Airborne snipers do the same thing. They use Delta Force to go grab these people and silence them by killing them. And maybe something else ought to tell. And well, you know, if this goes on, where do they get the money to finance all this and stuff? Well, very simply, either they're selling arms, they're selling drugs. A lot of this business about, you know, having the spec ops and they get these unlimited amounts of money. Well, they're not coming. It's not coming from the government coffer. It's coming from running drugs or weapons, or, you know, the selling of hardware or whatever.